Alright, so we've done the 4K run. That was 4 credits. Got it or not, right? Then there's the training program which you did, and the evaluation of that training program is another 4 credits, and we haven't yet done that. The way that you're going to be assessed on that is first of all you had to experience actually do the training program, alright? And secondly, then what you have to do is once you've done it, you have to evaluate it. And the way that the evaluation is done is via a written report. You'll be given 4 periods of class time, and it's the only time you'll have to do it. However, you can prepare for the assessment in your own time, and I'll give you some class time between now and next Tuesday to do that. I'll give you forms, and it'll help you plan, and what you'll be able to take into the assessment is that plan, or those plans. You'll have access to Teams, so you can use any of the information on Teams. You'll have your books with you, your workbooks. You'll have things like your exercise physiology research home, which you've done to be able to use that information. So it's essentially an open book test. The only thing you cannot do is have any other tab open except for Teams and the assessment itself. It's done online, so it's digital, so you need to make sure you've got a charged computer every single day for those 4 periods. If you run out of battery, perhaps you run the potential of just not being able to do work on that day. Okay, so it's up to you. That's your self-management. Any questions so far? Am I looking good, Max?
Lucas.
Let's get on our leads, is he? Okay, so biophysical principles. So the assessment for this one asks you to evaluate the use of biophysical principles in a training program. Those 2 words are fancy ways of saying biophysical principles are these things: the methods of training. Jack, you know it all.
That's it.
I'll be watching them. The principles of training, the sports psychology we've used, and the exercise physiology which we have just done some homework on. What you have to do is you have to choose one of each. One method of training to talk about, and you do a written report. Alright? You have to choose one principle of training we used, and you do a written report. All the same questions. And you have to choose one sports psychology thing that we used, and you do a written report on that. The reports are in this form. You'll be asked to describe and explain what you used. You'll be asked to talk about what the positives and negatives of the use of that particular thing was. And you'll be asked, now what? What are you going to do in the future if you were to redesign that training program, say if you did another 4K run or another endurance event? Alright? So that's essentially what the assessment is going to be. Now, you are all capable of minimum of merit in this. Okay? To get a merit, what you have to do is you have to explain in detail how biophysical principles, so any of those 3 things we've talked about, relate to your training. Right? But you must also show how these things worked together or interrelated together, had a relationship to get an effect. Now, what do I mean by interrelationships? So we've used continuous training, but we also used intensity with continuous training to try and get a particular effect in our training. How do we use intensity? What do we do?
Running.
So that was the continuous training, so that's the example. How do we measure our intensity and how we work?
Heart rate.
Right, heart rate. Okay, so we use heart rate. What else? Before we used heart rate, I gave you
Scale thing?
yeah, so it's called perceived exertion ratio. Okay? So we use those things together. That's an interrelationship. If you can explain in detail how those things work together to have an effect, whether it was positive or negative for you, that is at merit level. And just a word on that, everything doesn't have to be positive. When you evaluate something, you are looking at the positives, but you also have to look at the things that didn't go well for you. So what I don't want a piece of writing for all 3 logs where it's all just sunshine, rainbows, and happiness for you, because then that tells me you're not evaluating properly. Okay. The energy exercise physiology, you don't have to do a log for that, but it's expected that you use this information that you talked about to back up your other answers. So for example, here we go. Continuous training was interrelated with intensity training, and we used our heart rate and our perceived exertion ratio to get what was out of these, what we're trying to get.
Overload.
Good, thank you. Right? And then from overload, we're hoping to get some exercise physiology adaptations where we might get one of those things, or 3 of those things, or 4 of those things improved. Right.
How long is the thing have to be?
How long is the thing have to be? You've got 3 logs to do. I'm going to show you some exemplars. Alright? Don't get caught up on how long it is. Get caught up on the quality of the connections you're making across these things and how well you explain them. So if you want a guide though, alright, if you have a look at the merit plus the excellence answer in that book, that one there, that's kind of a guide per log. So you do 3 times that.
Yep.
Okay? But you've got plenty of time to do your planning, alright?
Yep.
And the expectation is you plan at home too, right? You need to do homework on this. Levi?
Is this a open book test?
Yep, so open book, you've got Teams, all of the files and Teams you can use. You can take that booklet in, alright? Bear in mind though, you can't use that exemplar in your answer because I know what that exemplar is. If I see any of that in your answers, it's a straight not achieved, alright? It's what we call plagiarism, so you need to be careful of that. That's there to give you ideas, not an answer, alright? Yeah, so it's open book essentially. But you can't, the only 2 tabs that are open are your assessment and Teams. Yes, John T.
Write down notes and then
Yes.
put them into the thing.
Yep, so we're going to start that today. I'm going to give you a planning template for each 3 of those logs, and you can plan as hard as you want. And you can go home and plan and research and all of that stuff, so that when you hit next Tuesday, it's just on my way. Alright? These are all good questions. Any other parts of it before we turn the video off? Okay, we stop.